I'm Yukitsu, this is Yukitsu Times. Welcome to my channel. Welcome to Total War Warhammer. This is our third set, or bracket, I guess, or whatever you want to think of it as, in our Total War tournament that we're running. Super casual, super just for fun. We've got the Vampire Counts, led by Guderian versus Chomp and his Chaos Warriors here. You've got four Forbidden there, 4 units of Chaos Halberdiers. Bit of an odd choice to have 4 of them, that's quite a few. 2 units of Chaos Spawn, 2 Lore of Metal, I believe, Sorcerers. No, that's Lore of Fire Sorcerers. And a General, we'll see what he's on, versus Manfred, Necromancer, Graveguard, the Vargulf, 2 Hex Karen Wraiths, Blood Knights, 2 units of Cryptors, another Blood Knight, Skeletons with Spears, and regular Skeletons. So this is a very diversified and spread out there kind of very messy kind of undead army here, in my opinion. It's got some interesting stuff here. You don't typically see that Vargulf that often. Karen Wraiths and Cryptors, very good units against Chaos, so we'll see how they do. Typically, personally, I like using Giants against Undead as Chaos. I think that's a very good sort of use there. Manfred is indeed on the Zombie Dragon, and looks like the Chaos General is on the Horse. Looks like a Barded Steed there. So, yeah, we're going to have a relatively hard time dealing with that General there for the Chaos faction here. Fireballs do work against Manfred, but he's in the air there. It's not exactly a great target for that sort of thing, just because it's a little bit hard to hit that. Now, if he does dual Fireballs with Overcast, though, that could really possibly hurt. Here comes, though, the typical death nonsense there. Here you can see those Fireballs connecting, and they deal a good amount of damage. Ooh, one of them actually missed from fairly close range. Rare for those to miss like that. Personally, for Fireballs, I would be saving them for the Blood Knights. Manfred's going to slowly regenerate that health back, so it's not really going to be a big enough of a hit to him to make that big of a difference, and it didn't deal that much damage. The armor-piercing damage on the Fireball is quite low. Goes sparkling off into the distance there, taking some damage there, but Chaos General Spirit Leeched for a discount price there. Now, this wing of the Skeleton Warriors and the Graveguard and all that are going to get taken care of by the Forsaken very, very easily if the Forsaken manage to get a charge. If they don't get a charge, however, it's going to be a little bit messy. Here we see a, I think this is going to be, yep, Fate of Bajuna going down on the Chaos Spawn. No, that's a Spirit Leech, actually. That's a very peculiar choice against that sort of target. Maybe it was a misclick. I suspect maybe it was. We're probably going to see a Vortex coming down here. Oh, actually, we're seeing the Chaos player putting down, looks like Cascading Fire Cloak, maybe? Some kind of buff, I think, went down on the Forsaken there. Or it may have been, yeah, no, I think that probably was a buff of some sort. I can't really tell for sure which one it was. Could have been the ones that gave them magical attacks, actually. That would make sense given what they're fighting. Here we see probably this, yeah, this one's the Fate of Bajuna used against the Chaos Spawn. Chaos Spawn are meatbag shields. They've got tons of hit points per model. They're not going to go down too easily here. We got some more Chaos Spawn coming in. Seeing more Fate of Bajuna going down. Lots of real spam of that sort of spell here. There's lots of unengaged Chaos Warriors here, but they're sort of defending against those imminent attacks from those Blood Knights. Let's see what these guys are doing. I think they are piling in the spells. It looks like they're turning the attacks into magical ones so that they can kill these Karen Wraiths. Very, very effective counter against those if you're going to sort of try that sort of tricky play. We've got some Forsaken, though, getting charged by Blood Knights in the back, and that's going to be really bad for them. They got nerfed on their normal statistics, meaning that a charge against them, absolutely devastating. Seeing some Pyrotechnics over here, but little more than Fireworks. That's not a particularly great spell. It does work well against Cryptors in the sense that they are weak to flaming attacks. Here we see that these Chaos Spawn are getting charged and back by these Blood Knights that are sort of dragged through those Chaos Forsaken. Chaos Warriors with Halberds are in pursuit, and that's going to cause them a lot of trouble, but they're able to cause tons of damage to those those Chaos Spawn. All the names sort of confuse me here. Vargulf here, getting attritioned down. He has a hard time keeping his low morale up there, so it's going to be a pretty bad fight for him. Over here, the Blood Knights charged right into the midst of the Chaos Warriors with Halberds. Yes, he did get a bit of a rear charge there, but they've sort of leveled out now. Now that they're just fighting head-to-head, that's going to go very much in favor of those Halberdiers, because the Blood Knights just don't have the armor penetration that demigryphs do, so you can't use them quite the same way against infantry. Manfred down here getting piled into there, but he's getting piled into a fight with those Chaos Warriors with Halberds, and that's going to cause a lot of damage to him very, very quickly. The Chaos Lord, on the other hand, is getting his ass completely kicked. He is a weak Lord, so that is not a surprise. He also does count as large, so he's going to be taking extra damage from these Blood Knights, and you can see that that is causing him a lot of grief. He is going to start retreating at this point in time, although these Blood Knights are probably done for if they don't get some necromantic help pretty damn soon. We're seeing these fire wizards have basically run out of magic to assist here, although they have taken out a unit of Karen Wraiths with their assistance at this point in time, so it's really going to come down to polishing off these Crypt Horrors and then surrounding up and defeating this last bit of Karen Wraith. Since there have been so many Spirit Leeches and Faded Bajunas, I mean, I wouldn't mix those strategies with the Invocation, so you're going to see these guys going down no matter what sort of other situation you've got here. Looks like Manfred is making sure that that Chaos General does get killed. Probably a good call here. This Chaos Spawn, the last of them, is fighting to the death against these Skeleton Warriors. Going to be hard for those Skeleton Warriors to finish off, even though there's only one of them with very little health. Gonna have to see these Chaos Warriors with Halberds getting back into the fight here, though. You do need to wrap up and surround this ball of troops here, otherwise you're going to have it take a long time to get rid of. Forsaken coming back into the fight as well, but at this point in time, it's going to come down to just whether or not there's enough magic in the pool for the undead to keep this fight going for long enough to win, but I doubt very much that they have got enough of that. We're seeing something coming down here. Looks like more magical attacks for Chaos. Looks like these Chaos Spawn are going to be out of the fight here, but these Chaos Spawn coming in, these Halberdiers getting around the back, getting that surround that they needed to get there. Blood Knights over here, pretty much on the verge of death. I don't think that there's enough necromantic energy left for them to pull any more invocations of Nihakov, and this is going to cause the rest of this army to crumble, even if Manfred's in here doing a great job of defeating a lot of these units. Seeing some of these Chaos Spawn getting wiped out now, that could be a bit of help, but I think at this point it's a little bit too late. Manfred now technically in the rear of this army. He needs to get back into the fight, but he needs to not be fighting these halberds. Those halberds are causing a good amount of damage. He didn't end up finishing off that general, so he runs back into the fight here. Necromancer's got weak binding here. He's starting to take some damage, and with this is going to be the first match here, and that was a pretty interesting match between Guderian and his undead. It was a little bit one-sided, but I think that came down mostly to the management of the troops there. Yeah, like when you just don't have enough chaff or whatever to pin down and stop those Chaos Warriors from doing what they want to do, your undead are going to suffer, and that's sort of what happened here. I do think that the Blood Knights, interesting unit, but I think 2 units is an overcommitment against Chaos, just because Chaos is very, very difficult to when you're using just very, very large targets. Now, if you did have 2 Giants, then that could have been a good time to have 2 Blood Knight units, but at the same time, it's very, very difficult to make your money back on those Blood Knights otherwise. Alright, that was our first match of that bracket. Let's go ahead and take the second one on here. Here we've got Chomp as the Empire, and we've got Guderian over here as the Dwarves. Dwarf versus Empire on Glacial Lake is a very, very peculiar matchup because of how open it is, how easy it is for artillery to get to work here, and that is indeed what we're going to be seeing here, a battle of the guns. Got a grand battery of 4 great cannons for the Empire, 2 Reichsguard Knights, 3 units of handgunners, 2 great swords, 3 swordsmen, a warrior priest, and Balthazar Geld. A little bit of an odd combination there for the Lord selection from Chomp. Over here we've got the Dwarf, 2 rune priests. This is going to be a setup that we see quite a bit. We see a unit of Dwarf warriors, 6 I believe, units of Longbeards, yeah, 2 Dwarven cannons. I believe we also saw 3 units, yes, 3 units of Thunderers. So that's going to be the Dwarven lineup. They're going to get, 4 units of Gunners. Thunderers, I do not agree with that pick against the Empire. Here we're going to see that Grand Battery opening fire here. These Reichsguard ready to sort of intercept anything that gets too crazy here. Now, these handgunners, I think that if he had taken crossbows, Quarrelers for the Dwarves, they would have definitely had the advantage here. This is one of those times where, as the Dwarves, I would definitely want to rush against the Empire because, I mean, 4 great cannons, a very, very, very large investment. I would probably set my guns to fire away at the Reichsguard over here. I would probably start moving my army up forward right away and try and get in there. I think we got some confusion here from Guderian trying to decide what he's going to do, what he's going to have going on here as he retreats his units back. Dwarves getting plastered left and right here as they sort of just sit in cannon range in these sort of dense formations. This is going to be really bad for him, but I think he really doesn't know what to do in this situation. And like I said, it's a newer, more casual player base for this tournament, so that is what you're going to typically see. People sort of panic and make bad decisions from time to time in real games as well, in really competitive games. And here you can see one of those cannons already getting plastered, so that's going to really reduce his counter battery capability here. Now, if these dwarves do move in, just because there's so few true melee unit threats in the Empire army here, only 2 of them, he could probably overwhelm the entire melee blob here while still attacking these cannons. Now, doing that while fending off the Reichsguard might be a little bit difficult. Might be taking a little bit of shots from those handgunners while he's at it, but it is definitely going to be better than trying to go gun to gun against these great cannons. The great cannons do actually outquality in some ways the dwarven cannons because they've got that longer range. Does mean that they're going to be able to fire from just a little bit further. He's got slightly better, in my opinion, target choices because he knows that these infantry units going to be the main advantage for Guderian over here, so he's going to have to take them all out pretty much as soon as possible. If these runesmiths were focused entirely on taking out the Reiksguard, they could probably weaken to the point where they're not much of a threat, but the dwarves need to be moving up here as fast as possible. Alright, so we're probably going to see this settle into a bit of a skirmishing match first. I think the dwarves are still hoping that they will be able to counter battery and destroy those cannons. After all, the Empire cannons are not firing back at the dwarven cannons. But that's probably not going to be the case here. Cannons are not the most accurate unit for taking out other cannons unless they've got, for some reason, like the steam tank cannon for some reason is very good at taking out cannons. I'm not 100% sure why. Similarly, there's other things that could make a cannon good at taking out a cannon, like an engineer is quite good at it. Here we see the first one going down, but we're already 5 cannons against like 11, so it's not going to go very well for the dwarves if this continues. They're losing far too many troops. Their formations are still a little bit too clumped together. Here we can see this unit probably will break pretty soon. Here they are down to shaken, but they need to hit the cannons themselves. Honestly, at this point in time, if I was the Empire, I would really like to use the lore of fire, because the lore of fire is amazing at sniping out cannons, very long range, capable of outranging those guns. Here comes this, goes down the second Empire Great Cannon. He still has 10 more to go though, so that's going to be a while. This unit might as well no longer be the focus of the fire though. He could be firing at these other ones. Looks like he has switched over to this Great Cannon over here, and we'll see how that goes for him, but again, this is probably not the best play from these players here. Well, I think that the Empire staying like this is exactly what they want to do in this situation, but I think that it definitely was a strange compositional choice. Definitely one that opened up a lot of weaknesses for it. Seeing a lot of those great cannon crew getting demolished, but it doesn't matter until you take out those cannons, in my opinion, because you tend to have like units of 6 or something like that rallying back in. But if you destroy all 3 cannons, it doesn't matter how much morale the unit has remaining. It's gonna be completely ineffective. Dwarves have lost about half their number in total, I would say. They've lost 87 to that cannon, they've lost 47 to those guns, they've lost 63 to those ones, and 83 to this one. So, Great Cannons doing a very good job of defeating a lot of these dwarves. Dwarves are trying to hide behind this sort of weird pit thing that does tend to screw up cannonballs, or at least whenever I fire them, it doesn't seem to work very well. Still, cannons plugging away at the Empire cannons themselves. Looks like they've taken out half the crew, but have not silenced any of the guns themselves. You can see that, you know, it's just not too easy to take these guys out. Looks like they finally made this unit withdraw. They'll definitely rally at numbers of 15, unless they keep getting hit by those cannonballs on the way back, but we'll see how that goes for them. In the meantime, though, like, this Empire blob is moving forward. They have got lower numbers than the dwarves do, so it's going to be a little bit difficult for them to win this fight, per se, but, I mean, it's not going to be super hard for them or anything like that. Handgunners opening fire on the dwarves at extremely long range. They're going to get a few shots off there. Some good kills against these dwarf warriors, long beards rather. These handgunners in return, our thunderers, are not in position to return fire, getting shot in the back as well, so they're receiving some casualties. More dwarves being dropped constantly. Not really seeing a whole lot of initiative from the dwarf player where he really needed to take that initiative, and this is going to be hard for him. I think this is one of those just cases of inexperience and looking at a composition, thinking to yourselves that you know, this is coming into a game with a strategy. He had a plan in mind, he had an idea in mind, but it isn't going to work out too well if your opponent has sort of the same strategy as you, but has more extreme versions of that strategy, and you can see that that is the case here. Got a gunline dwarf army here protected by warriors, but we've got an even bigger gunline from the Empire player. You see the dwarves finally switching targets over towards the Empire's infantry, taking out a couple of them from the first and second rows, but those great swords are the biggest threat that he's got to his army at this point in time, I would say. Seeing a couple of his handgunners getting dropped from handgunner shots in return, but I mean, going musket to musket at this point in time does definitely not favor the dwarves because of the sheer numbers advantage for the Empire's handgunners at this point. And the fact that he's kind of got them further back. He's hoping that the Empire is going to charge him into melee still, but really that's a hopeless hope. There's no reason whatsoever for the Empire at this stage of the game to charge in against these dwarves. Is coming in with the Reiksguard. Not sure what the target is. They might just be getting into position. Still seeing cannonball shots here all over the place. A lot of these handgunners in the middle game plastered. Looks like the Empire is finally deciding that they're going to make their move into melee combat, but not necessarily sure that they even need to here. It's such a it's a bit of a duck shoot here. These dwarves just sort of standing there taking hits. Looks like Balthazar Gelt isn't even really going to have to cast anything, but I think that if he were to pop maybe a couple of spells in the sort of middle of this, it might finish off a couple of these units here. Nothing. I don't like the Vortexes still. Gainus Golden Hounds is still pretty useless. It looks like the Great Swords are finally being targeted by these guys here, but we'll see what the Rune Priests, Runesmiths start targeting. It would be nice to see them targeting the Reiksguard. I think that they're a little bit more susceptible to things like Rune of Wrath and Ruin, but the Great Swords are probably the bigger threat, so pulling Rune of Wrath and Ruin on them would probably be a great idea. We see a final transmutation coming off, probably on the Thunderers here, hitting a large cluster of these dwarves, and it's going to actually drop these Longbeards over here pretty much down to nothing. And you can see that that's actually an overcast on that. Balthazar Gelt's got the Channeling Wand. I'm wondering if he actually used it. It's hard to tell. But at this point in time, there's not a whole lot left going for the dwarves. Have taken out a really good chunk of those Great Swords, though. That's a very good use of those cannons at that last second there. The second unit of Great Swords, however, getting into combat unmolested. These swordsmen are going to do just fine against these Dwarf Warriors because the Dwarf Warriors have been so badly depleted. We'll have to see what other spells Balthazar Gelt has got up his sleeve. Transmutation of Lead can be a very, very effective spell. Reiksguard coming in around this flank here, just charging into the front of Longbeards, but also getting into the cannons, as well as the remaining little bits of Thunderers. That's going to be enough to deal a pretty crippling blow. Got Great Swords running into the middle of these Thunderers over here, and that's going to be more than enough to take out these last little bits of Dwarven shooters. You can see that those Thunderers trying desperately to sort of fire off their guns even at melee combat range before switching over to melee combat. Looks like we got a Searing Doom coming down. It's not going to be very effective, especially because the main thrust of the fighting effectiveness over here are the Runesmiths. Rune of Oath and Steel coming down from these Runesmiths to try and keep them in the fight a little bit longer. It's going to be quite effective against swordsmen who have poor armor-piercing damage. But the handgunners back here still doing a pretty decent job of keeping Overwatch, but they've lost their ability to really fire at anything. Looks like Balthazar Gelt has been hit by a couple of cannonballs from point-blank range. Not exactly great for him. He's going to have to get out of there or something like that. More importantly, he should probably get those cannons silenced here. Got a handgunner unit that must have been chasing a unit to fire at it, but looks like we're going to see a wrap-up of these Dwarven forces here. Now, this is one of those situations where I have played matches like this as the Dwarven player, but this is one of those cases where you can actually very early on just stretch out your lines and attack, and it will work. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of that. Would have made it for not necessarily a more even match. I think that there's still a player gap here in terms of experience, but I definitely think that would have been a little bit more competitive for the Dwarves to have done so. Now, even though they do have two cannons, it's not tremendously a waste or anything like that. You're going to see the Dwarf Lord starting to take pot shots from these handgunners, and they're going to be able to do a little bit of damage to him, but not a whole lot. Last group of handgunners is turning to fire at him, setting up a bit of a crossfire, firing at their own friends over there, but since they're further away, it's not going to matter that much. Great Swords, oh, no, regular swordsmen over here, getting into the fight, and it looks like we're seeing a final transmutation. Note Rune of Oath and Steel coming down from these guys, going to stop them from taking as much damage. Seeing Rune of Wrath and Ruin coming down on the handgunners, odd choice of unit for that. Still are not seeing any more spells right now from Balthazar Gelt. It looks like they've got enough magic, but he might be waiting for an overchannel of the Rune of Wrath and Ruin to try, or sorry, of a final transmutation rather, to try and get rid of the last of these guys. Rune of Wrath and Ruin coming down on these Great Swords, good choice for that. As far as targets go, we're going to have to see the Dwarves pull something miraculous, though, to win this. Balthazar Gelt getting threatened here. He's going to have to move out of the way. It looks like he instead decides to charge straight into two Runesmiths, and that does break them. I guess he was saving up. It looked like that final transmutation coming down at the last second over there. So, fairly decisive looking victory for the Empire over the Dwarves there. Very, very interesting choice of army. I do think that the Dwarves had a chance there. I think it was actually a pretty decent one, but they sort of squandered some of the advantages that they had in that particular matchup and didn't let themselves shine the way that they really should have been able to. Anyway, let's move on to round 3 of this tournament matchup here. Alright, we got Chomp on the Bretonnians over here versus Guderian as the Empire. And we can see that the Empire's gone for a bit of a cheeky build here with 2 steam tanks, 3 units of handgunners, 5 units of halberdiers, unit of spearmen with shields, light wizard, warrior priest, which is a little bit odd, and the Empire General versus Lone Leoncourt, probably on the Hippogriff. Beaquist, a Heaven Damsel, whatever, 4 units of spearmen at arms, 3 units of bowmen, 4 units of Knights of the Realm, 3 units of Pegasus Knights. So the steam tanks are going to provide a little bit of difficulty, but if Lone Leoncourt is indeed on the back of Beaquist, he's going to have an easy time tearing his way through those through those steam tanks, so he's going to be crucial to this with the sort of knowledge of that. If he does lose Lowen Leoncourt to assassination from that light wizard, he is going to be in significant trouble. Looks like the Empire has put all of their characters on ground here. Very, very smart move against Bretonnia, because the Bretonians do have a very easy time taking out any sort of air characters. Now, this does limit the ability, though, for the Empire to actually beat the Bretonians in an air fight to kill that general. And if they can't kill that general, they are going to have an ability to kill that steam tank off. So he's going to have to be very, very careful about that. We got some shots fired off at the Lord Lowen Leoncourt. Back here, he was getting shot at a little bit from the steam tanks. A little bit of shots taken at these spearmen at arms as well as these peasant bowmen from those steam tanks, but that's going to be the way it is over there. Lowen Leoncourt has got hit point regeneration. You can see some shots taking out a couple of these Pegasus Knights, one of them getting hit by a cannonball there. This is a decent amount of Pegasus Knights, and they're going to have an easy time getting into those handgunners. Now, we've got some halberdiers going off to the flank to try and defend against these Knights of the Realm that are coming around there, but there is Knights of the Realm coming from both sides to a certain extent. We've got some more over there, and they're not going to be able to protect their handgunners regardless, just because they've got all of these Pegasus Knights, which are going to be able to get into those handgunners regardless and deal some damage to it. We're going to see some focus fire coming down from those longbows, it looks like. Let's see what they're targeting. Probably the halberdiers. Yep, the halberdiers are taking a significant amount of damage there. Let's see what spell's coming down. I bet this is coming from the damsel. Comet of Cassandora, a bit of an odd choice of target there. Honestly, the Lore of Heavens has one of the better vortexes with chain lightning, in my opinion. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. These handgunners, halberdiers, however, are getting absolutely shredded, so they're going to have to be careful about that. Spearmen, I mean, if they had actually just mashed into melee combat with those steam tanks over there, they probably would have done a pretty good job. Pegasus Knights coming into the Spearmen, and I don't know if I agree with that necessarily. We are seeing a lot of these handgunners, however, getting tangled up by these Pegasus Knights. Knights of the Realm coming around from the rear as well, and this is going to be the end, essentially, of the Empire's main line of infantry. We're seeing some stuff coming down from that Warrior Priest, the Hammer of Sigmar, Fate, Sebastian, Shield of Fate, and I believe we saw as well that other offensive spell here, but that's not going to be enough to save this unit of halberdiers pressed against by all four of the Bretonnian Spearmen at Arms. I don't really know why he's got all four of the Spearmen at Arms clustered here, but that is what we've got. We've got another Comet of Cassandora coming down, dealing a little bit of damage. Comet of Cassandora, I think, is best when used for the higher powered shots against heavily armored ones. It's one of those overcast ones that I like, but even then, it's probably not that great. We're seeing Net of Amentok being used to sort of bog down this Bretonnian infantry, or sorry, cavalry, but it's not a great time for it just because those Bretonnian units are no longer really tied up by anything. They're not going to take any damage from that. They're not being fired at by anything in particular. Steam Tank over here is taking a little bit of damage, but not too much. This unit of halberdiers over here is pretty fresh, and you're seeing some of the Empire units rallying. Warrior Priest is going to be able to do a good job over here, but he's going to take some damage pretty quickly. He does have a low armor statistic of 30, meaning he's not going to last too long against those sorts of units. On the other hand, we are seeing more bowfire coming down on these halberdiers, dropping them very, very quickly. That focus fire working very, very well to get rid of them quite quickly. Light Wizard getting knocked across the battlefield by Lowen Leoncourt, and he's going to be a decisive edge in this sort of battle. Just like having a Lord with regeneration makes him both harder to assassinate, makes him a lower priority target, because if you can't focus fire him down instantly down to nothing, he's going to be hard to get rid of. You're seeing that Warrior Priest also starting to rout. And this is going to be pretty much the entire Empire army except for those steam tanks, and it's going to be down to whether or not those steam tanks can take on the entire Bretonnian army. I have seen the steam tanks take on entire armies before, but not when they've got something like Lowen Leoncourt on the field here, because they deal fairly low melee damage, and you can see that he's managed to get quite easily into melee combat. He has got armor-piercing attacks. He's dealing thousands of points of damage, and he's turned around just to try and get rid of this Light Wizard. He's got a charge coming in against the steam tank with these Pegasus Knights. They're not going to really do much other than be able to tie it up a little bit, but he does need to get rid of that Light Wizard. If he doesn't, that Light Wizard could have that ability to sort of assassinate Lowen Leoncourt. We're seeing a lot of fire coming down from a lot of different places, but it's not necessarily going to be too important at this point in time, with most of the Empire's lines either in flight or having essentially too few members left to make a big contributing contribution to this fight here. The Light Wizard over here is still getting poked at and picked on by Lowen Leoncourt, who's regenerating health at a pretty rapid pace here, faster than that Light Wizard could ever hope to damage him. And you are indeed seeing that Light Wizard essentially down to fleeing again. covered in blood, completely out of the fight. But I at this point would probably send the Pegasus Knights after him. Lone Lane Corps is going to be needed to destroy these steam tanks. He's excellent at it for a couple of reasons. For one, he's fast enough to catch them. Steam tanks otherwise could simply kite backwards for a long time, but Lone Lane Corps with the speed of 110, I believe, 100 actually, is capable of catching up to a steam tank at a speed of 54. And once he catches up to them, he's capable of dealing significant charge bonus damage to them. This other steam tank simply dying to raw attrition here. It's completely surrounded by knights, going to get poked at by their relatively low armor-piercing and damage attacks, but we still don't see the king in this fight here. He's still fighting that light wizard there, who's now shattered, going to be out of the fight completely relatively soon. Going to be interesting to see what these steam tanks are going to be doing and what ends up finishing them off, because they do last until basically they're killed. Still, I mean, even with the low damage attacks from these spearmen here, they're dealing enough that it's kind of getting withered down over time here. Steam tanks don't do well if they're left in protracted combat. You sort of want them moving in and out of combat so that they can fire their guns, and that's so that they can get that charge bonus that they've got. They've got a fairly respectable charge bonus as well. They're not going to actually deal that much damage against Lone Lane Corps, even though they've got armor-piercing hits. It's only 140 weapon strength, relatively low melee attack and melee defense. So here you see that one of them goes down, and this last one is getting completely surrounded, whittled down to absolutely nothing there, as is my ability to speak. And this is going to be the last little remnants of this Imperial attack. There it goes. And that is the last of the match. So we see Chomp taking this in a clean sweep there. Pretty interesting matchup. It's always fun to see the steam tanks marching around the field, and it's interesting to see them getting so many kills and so much veterancy from those. So they were still worth it, even though they could have definitely gotten a lot more. They did do well, and they did get what they needed to get. Lone Lane Corps didn't get too many kills, although more importantly, he killed a light wizard and 2 steam tanks. I mean, those are definitely going to be interesting trophies to mount on his wall. Anyway, I hope you found this episode enjoyable, and of course, as always, I hope to see you all next time.